Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie Jones, and I have taught FACS at Blevins High School for the past 2 years. And in case you are wondering, where is Blevins? We are a small rural school in the southwest part of the state. We're near Hope. And our high school is a 7th grade through 12th grade high school. Today, what I want to talk to you about is the foundational course, FCSI, and some of you may also know it as Family CSI. That's what we call it. At Blevins, we enroll our students in the course in the 7th grade. So we get them right as they come into high school. And it is a semester-long course. We balance it off with key code. And so all of our students are going to be taking Family CSI, and they'll all take key code. What I want to talk to you about today in the presentation is each of the standards. I'm going to go through each of the standards and talk about some of the topics that are addressed in each of those standards. And I also want to share with you some of the projects and activities that I have used with my students for each of the standards. And hopefully you will find something or hear something that is of interest to you and that you can use for your upcoming school year. Okay, so first up, we're going to go into Standard 1. This is what I refer to as the FCCLA standard. It actually starts out several of the FACS courses. I use this standard to encourage participation in FCCLA and participation in STAR events. I have several teams, or I have had several teams each year to participate in STAR events. And one of my goals this year was to get more 7th grade teams, 7th graders and level 1 teams involved. And I was able to successfully do that. The way that I start the unit is to give them the knowledge of FCCLA and talk about the history. I have a PowerPoint that I go through with them and a handout as well that they complete as we talk about the PowerPoint. I also have a quiz that I do with them at the end of the standard. We spend about a week here. It's right after, we do class introductions and they, get all of the initial high school type stuff out of the way. So I do within that first week of school. Some things to keep in mind: these kids are young and eager at this point. They want to participate, they want to do, but they also need, a lot of direction. For some, this is one of the first times that they've ever entered competition. And so there's a lot of teaching that happens, and it is by no means going to be perfect. I look at it with the mindset of letting them do it themselves. Okay, that's the only way I feel that's the only way that they're going to learn. And as they compete at this level, hopefully they'll learn enough from their mistakes that they'll improve and continue to compete with me through levels 2 and 3 and all the way through high school. I want them to continue and to learn every year from participating. I plug the National Leadership Conference location very, very big. I want them to see the, maybe not the end goal, but I want them to see the big picture. So I talk about where it's going to be located. Do you want to travel with Miss Jones? Do you want to go? Because for our students, most have never left the state for sure. Many have never left our southwest part of the state. And so they are willing to try just about anything to get to nationals. I talk to them about the different categories, but I structure it so that if I have students that want to do, more than one group of students that want to do the same category, I try to help them steer it a little bit differently, so that I can get as many groups as possible, so that as many of them that want to participate can participate. I try not to eliminate anyone based on the fact that we have students that want to do more than one category. Um, it's just a good overall unit for helping them to understand FCCLA and just piquing their interest and encouraging them to get involved. Okay, standard 2 for this standard is super important. Okay, so most of them, this is the first time that they are looking at themselves or taking care of themselves. It's the first time that they're taking care of their changing bodies. We know a lot are beginning to enter puberty around this time, and so a lot is changing in their world and a lot is changing for them. It can also be one of the first times that they are asked to reflect on what they want, what their goals are. We spend about 2 weeks on this standard. There are lots of topics that relate to them that they need to be able to understand, not only for them to become better people, but as far as hygiene, it's a big deal for us to um, make sure that their hygiene is the best that it can be. I'll say it that way. It for most of them, it's their favorite topic. They love to talk about themselves and love to focus on themselves. And so we talk about the hygiene. We focus on the hand washing. We also talk about a lot of interpersonal skills as far as reflection is concerned. We talk about peer pressure, their needs, their wants, their values. We talk about SMART goals in this section, helping them to think about themselves and where they want to be, where they want to end up. We talk about self-esteem and their self-concept. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but for a lot of them, they have very low self-esteem and self-concept at this point in their lives. They are, the only thing I can attribute it to is that things are changing so quickly. You know, for our students coming from elementary in the 6th grade and then coming up to the 7th grade, their friends may have changed, their friend group may have changed over the summer. And so a lot is changing for them, and a lot of that affects their self-esteem and their self-concept. So we work to try to build those back up and to help them feel good about themselves. 2 of the major activities that I do during this standard are their All About Me project, which I don't always know them when they're coming over from the 6th grade to the 7th grade. I don't always know them. And then a lot of times we get new students in at this point. And so their All About Me project is pretty I'll say pretty in depth, in that I have certain things that I want them to tell me about themselves. I also try to do one so I can show them what I'm expecting from them and what I would like for it to look like. And they like to tell, about themselves. And so that one's a good project. We also, like I said before, focus on the hygiene and the hand washing at this point. And so I spend time on teaching them the proper way to wash hands. I also have them write posters or create posters for younger children at this point on how to wash hands, so that we can make sure that they understand and are doing it properly. At some point we're going to be working it with food. And so I want them to know the proper way to wash their hands and to do it. use that all the time. We have the glow germ. I'm sure some of you have seen the glow germ project or experiment, however you want to say that, to where you use the glow germ material you can order from any science provider, and a black light to show them, that length of time and the motions that you use when you wash your hands can affect whether or not they're truly getting clean. And we spend about 2 weeks here, about 2 weeks. It takes us to get all of the topics covered that we need to. Standard 3 is the next standard. We spend about 2 weeks here as well. This standard is critical to their interactions with each other, their peers, as well as with the rest of the world around them. We want them to have positive interactions with everyone that's around, their friends, their family, the teachers, other adults. We want those interactions to be positive. So we talk about things like gossip and bullying, why not to do those, how those can be harmful. We also, with the way that the world is changing, especially with the way school is predicted to be with the upcoming year, we have to focus on cyberbullying as well. A lot of times they don't see, if they're not doing anything to the person in person, they don't see it as a problem. So we have to address cyberbullying as well. I also try to address conflict resolution during this standard, so that when problems arise between the students and their peers, they're able to work it out in a calm and respectable manner. Some of the activities that we do during this standard are the telephone game. If you've ever watched Ellen's Game of Games, or it's something like that, we start the conversation at one end, you whisper it to the person, and then they pass it down, and then they pass it down, and then they pass it down. And it's just to show how gossip can be told to one person, or information can be told to one person, and then when they talk about it with other people, it changes from between each person. Okay, it changes. And so gossip is pretty much the same way. What you hear may not be anywhere near or close to the original thing that was said, or the original message. We also review our school policies during this time, especially the ones on bullying. And then I also try to encourage them that if there is something that's going on, to let someone know. I make it available for them to provide me with anonymous tips. So far, this has worked out just fine. I've never had anything just super serious to be reported. But just showing them that they can let someone know without exposing themselves usually is a good way to get them to open up and to talk. For standard 4, to me, the purpose of this standard is to help them get along with their family. I know it can be a struggle at times, and for even with students being in the same grade, their roles at home can differ quite a bit. And they do differ quite a bit. Some of the 7th graders are their oldest sibling. And so they have younger brothers and sisters, and so they're trying to figure out how to help be a caregiver for those younger siblings, as well as learn and grow themselves. And then for other students in the class, they are the youngest. Okay. And so their siblings may be quite a bit older or, older than they are. And so they're all the same age, but their roles in their families are going to be quite different. It may also be the first time that they realize that their family, not all families are like theirs. Okay. The way I think of family, may not be the way that my friend thinks of family. There are going to be several different types of families. Some may have grandparents living with them. Some may be, have step families. Some may live with extended families. Some may not live with mom and dad. Some may live with grandparents, or some may live with aunts and uncles. And so during this standard, it's often a realization that not everyone's family is the same. But despite what your family looks like, you have to get along with them. Okay, it takes everybody to make things work. We also talk about their responsibilities within their families and how to, make those responsibilities work with everything else that they have going on. When they come up to high school from the 6th grade, they have a total of 8 class. We're on an 8-period day. And so they're going to have a total of 8 classes every day. And so they're going to have to balance the responsibility or their responsibility within the family with their schoolwork. And so that can be challenging. Some of the activities that I do with the students during this standard is a coat of arms assignment. And that's just kind of here is who I am within my family sort of activity. Just like the coat of arms was worn in medieval times for knights to represent their families, we do the same sort of thing with the students and their families. We also, when we talk about the different types of families, I give them an assignment to where they are to choose a TV or movie family. And they talk about what kind of family what type of family it is and why it fits into that category. Just to help them to see the different types of families in things that they do. Self-awareness and awareness in general are just huge themes that not only run through this standard, but through the course altogether. And we usually spend about 2 weeks here as well. With Standard 5, I try to get my students to understand that their actions affect the world around them. Okay. And also to just be aware of their surroundings. I want them to pay attention. I want them, to be aware. I don't want to make them paranoid, but just to be aware. We take about 2 weeks with this standard as well. We talk a lot about recycling, reusing, and reducing the materials that they are using in every day, not to be wasteful, to try to recycle where they can. We talk about one of our activities is to point out the locations for recycling in our school. And in our area, we don't have any recycling locations in our town, but in neighboring towns, there are places to go and recycle items. We do a home security checklist, so I send them home to, check out their homes and see where things are secure and where things maybe, they're able to make those a little more secure. There are also some internet sites that they can, put in information about themselves, or we can put in information about them to where they can see their ecological footprint, how big of an impact they're making. So we spend about 2 weeks, and we try to focus, help them to think about, I'm a part of the world, and what happens if I don't take care of it, or the world around me, I have to make sure that it's safe. Um, Looking to themselves for their own safety. All right, standards 6 and 7 run so closely together as far as activities are concerned that I just lump them together and take the full time to teach about the both of them. In total, we spent about 3 weeks on the two standards, and let me say, I don't spend the 2 weeks cooking. That is the number one question I'm sure that every FACS teacher receives is, when are we going to cook? When are we going to get to cook? When are we going to get to cook? So don't get me wrong, we don't spend a lot of time cooking. We don't spend a lot of time with the food preparation here, but we do spend about 3 weeks on the two standards together. And usually maybe about a week's worth of actual food preparation time. It is the favorite unit. Everybody wants to know when we're going to cook. So I try to focus them on the food safety aspect. I don't, of course, go as in depth as I would in food safety and nutrition, but just a good introduction, so that when they leave my course, they at least know that food can be harmful if they don't treat it in the right way. I also introduce them to kitchen tools or things that they're going to interact with on a regular basis. I try to bring in new foods to introduce them to, things that they may or may not have had before. So, and I usually try to focus it on fruits and vegetables, to just give them a good introduction and to help them see that there are different things. Some of the activities that we do during this these standards are they keep a food journal, just to be aware of what they're consuming. Are you getting any fruits and vegetables? Most of the time it's probably not. They're having Mountain Dew and Takis. And so I want them to be aware of that and to include a fruit or vegetable in there. The cafeteria does a good job at, making sure they get fruits and vegetables, but of course we cannot of course we can't force them to eat it. So I try to introduce them to it. Some are going to be adventurous enough to try it, and some are going to turn up their nose. But I go with the mindset of not forcing anyone to eat anything. I just try to encourage. We do some mini cooking labs. I try to usually focus it on things that they can have access to at home. Maybe they are not, mom or dad is working, or, whoever is working. And so we do some microwaving projects or some things that don't have to be cooked during this time, versus using, pots and pans and the stove. I focus more on kid safe cooking. We also review our hand washing again. They're going to be interacting with food, and we talk about how unclean hands can spread bacteria in the kitchen and cause them to be sick. So we go over the hand washing again. And sometimes I have had to, go back in with the glow germ project, and just to give them an idea that, hey, if I don't wash my hands, something bad could happen. And, it's important for me to have clean hands is my goal with that. We also go through some cooking terms and abbreviations during these standards. And we kind of have a mini quiz bowl, if you will, or like a, out loud type of quiz, to where we go through the different cooking terms and abbreviations. Okay. Standard 8 focuses on them managing the different aspects of their life. Okay, so time management, money management. We spend about a week here, and I focus more on the management of time because they have a lot more time than they do money, especially for a lot of the students that we have. They may or may not be receiving allowances. And so they have a lot more time than they do money. So we focus more on that. But during this standard, we talk about the management skills. We talk about planning, whether it's time or money. If they are receiving an allowance, or if they are getting money in some way, making plans for that. What are you going to do with that money? We also talk about budgeting. Okay, budgeting money, budgeting time. As I said before, we're on an 8-period day, and so for a lot of them, this is the first time where they've had a lot of multiple classes to contend with and to have to plan their time for. We're trying to make them more responsible. So, do adults in my life have to tell me, this is what you have to do right now? And do they have to tell you each and every step? Or are you going to learn to decide that on your own? And not to only decide that on your own, but to decide it so that you are doing the right things, if that makes sense. Okay. We also, the activities for this section are, I do a would you rather type of game, usually focused on money. Would you rather buy this, or would you rather do this? Or, if you were given the option of earning $5 a week or $1 a day, which one would you choose and why? We spend time on activities for that. We do a spending tracker, just having them be aware of and take time to realize what all they are spending within a week. As well as a time tracker, how much time are they spending playing video games or watching TV, and how much time are they spending on their studies. So just to help them to be aware. And, with awareness comes the ability to make better choices. All right, for standard 9, I kind of have to tread pretty lightly in this standard as far as the child development is concerned. I certainly don't go into the same depth that I would in my older or upper class for child development. But just to give them a general idea of, these are the stages for child development, and here's what ages it takes place through. And then the different areas of child development, socially, emotionally, that sort of thing. We also talk about emergency situations, as far as, if they are taking care of younger siblings, or if there have been, instances in which something happens to the adult that they are with. We have several students that are younger, but that live with grandparents. So, what happens if you're in an emergency situation with someone? How do you help them? So we focus on that. We focus on caregiving, because, like I said, in some cases, they are caregivers for people that are around them. We try to just have honest conversations within reason during this standard. I try to answer questions. I try to make it open and help them to feel free to ask questions. It has not gotten out of hand thus far, and hopefully it will not. Honesty is one of the best policies when it comes to dealing with our students. I also focus on resources, where they can go for help. If there's something wrong, you know, heaven forbid they are in a situation that is not ideal for students, I want them to know what resources are available and where they can go for help. So I try to focus on that during this standard. Okay, standard 10 is where we spend another large chunk of time. I usually take about 3 weeks with this standard, and this is the sewing standard, or what a lot of them think is the sewing standard. But we also focus on clothing as well as clothing care. Okay, so I try to at least introduce them to the washing machine. Some of them know how to do laundry. It just depends on kind of what household they've grown up in, and what their responsibilities are at home. So we at least try to talk about clothing care, and if nothing else, I want them to be able to help whoever does the laundry in their house have a little bit of an easier time, make it easier on that person. But we talk about clothing styles and trends. We talk about different types of fabrics and clothing. We talk about appropriate clothing for different situations. We have several, I don't know if this happens at your schools as well, but we have several students that they wear shorts no matter the time of the year. And I know it doesn't get deathly cold here in Arkansas, but there are lots of times where shorts are just not appropriate. And so I try to talk to them about things like that. We talk about sewing, but mending. I do try to give them tips and tricks for different emergencies, you know, like if their zipper won't stay up on their jeans, you know, getting one of those key rings and looping it over the button and then buttoning over that. Those sorts of tips and tricks for different clothing emergencies. You know, if they have a rip in their pants in the wrong place, you know, what can you do to get yourself out of that situation? Because a lot of times they just don't know, you know. We take for granted that they understand and they know what to do, and a lot of times they don't. So we try to talk about those sorts of things in the class. Some activities that we do are fashion boards. That way they can take fashion from magazines and other places versus wearing their own clothing to school. Okay, so they may not have, you know, a lot of times they may not have appropriate clothing, or what, you know, for different situations. They may not have a dressier outfit, and so I don't want them to feel left out. So we use fashion boards to kind of get around that. They cut out the pictures of a magazine and, you know, glue it down and talk about the type of situation in which these clothes would be appropriate and that sort of thing. This is where we also do a hand sewing project. I don't have, or I have not had a good way or nice way to be able to, you know, rotate everyone to the machine yet in the 7th grade. So I try to save that for my older classes. So we focus in this grade more on the hand sewing projects. And it's nothing just big. Actually, in the fall of this year, we made the little handheld monster, just a hand sewn monster toy. And that was just a way for them to use different stitching and to just get some experience with it. To me, it's always pretty funny to watch the younger boys hand sew for the project. It's frustrating for some of them. I had one that just swore up and down he was not going to need this ever. And so I hope that he doesn't need it, but he has the skills if he does need them. So this is a big, you know, part of FACS for several of them. They always think of the cooking and the sewing. And so I try to give that adequate time. Okay, standard 11 is our last standard. We spend about a week here, and the focus is careers. You know, we're wrapping things up. We talked about all these different skills, and now I'm trying to get them to see and understand why the skills, um, why the skills are needed to, you know, for the future, how these skills relate to the careers. And so the big activities I do here are a career search. I have a form. They go online and they go to a certain website and they find out about these careers. I try to steer them toward facts related careers, and we do talk about facts related careers, but in their career search, I let them pick any career and then I try to talk about why they need facts for that career. For the most part, I can get them pretty connected, at least a little bit connected. And then we do a celebrity career search and report, and so we focus on celebrities that have facts related careers. We talk about chefs, of course. It can be TV chefs or chefs in real life. We talk about clothing designers. We talk about interior designers. So we, you know, I'm thinking of HGTV, and those sorts of things. And so I try to relate all of that back to facts, and you know why it's important for you to learn these skills. And so in the career, we focus on the careers. Okay, so just to wrap all of this up, in talking about the upcoming school year, I know that a lot of us are, you know, thinking that we're going to be doing school virtually, or at the very least blended learning, to where they are able to use, you know, technology quite a bit to do their learning. A lot of schools are planning to use Lincoln Learning Solutions for the upcoming year, but as most of you probably already know, it does not have a CTE component, or they have not created a CTE component for it at this time. And so what our school is planning to do is to utilize the ICEV learning management system to take the place of that for the year. Of course, we utilize Google Classroom, and even in the past years, I've utilized that for submission of work and organizing things. There's also EverFi that can be used with the virtual and blended learning systems. And so there are different programs that are out there. It's just a matter of finding which one works best, works best for you. We also have to consider sending materials home and pre-made kits. It's going to be easier to do this for some units versus others. For me, I would probably send the sewing materials home in kits as opposed to the food materials. My plan would be to create lists so that parents can purchase the food materials, because a lot of times the food materials can be utilized for more than one thing versus the sewing materials. So but either way, we'll just have to make it work, and we're going to have to just keep calm about things and press on. This is new to everyone. All of it's new to everyone, and there's a ton of factors that we have to think about as we continue throughout the year. But we'll make it. I have full confidence that we're going to make it just fine, and that we will still be able to provide our students with the experience that they would get in our classroom. It's just a matter of finding out, or figuring out how to do that. Again, my name is Natalie Jones. I thank you for sitting through this presentation. here on the screen are both my emails, my school one as well as my personal email. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at either one of those addresses. And God bless, and I hope that you have a wonderful school year.